Hello there, welcome back to another show. Today I'm talking about the best James Cameron's film from the 90s, or the late 80s. Then the director's cut came out in the 90s, early 90s. This was one of the early director's cuts, and I'm doing this as an extension of what I did with Dion in the podcast last week. There's two films I'm talking about a director's cut this week. This one, and there's one coming up later on in the week. And they both are kind of extensions of that podcast. So I can talk about in detail about one or two films I kind of covered, but didn't really get into enough detail about, so I wanted to do a bit more on them. This was one of their best. This was kind of the start of the director's cuts, because there had been rumours of director's cuts before, and little bits had come out here or there, but this is when the studios realised they could make money on films that had been butchered a little bit before release, and all the fans liked the film and wanted to see the full version of it. So we got the Aliens director's cut to start with, which was just an extended version. Basically, there was 20 minutes taken out, and basically a couple of little subplots that were taken out, so they put them back in. Didn't really change the film at all, really. I mean, added a bit of a subplot when you find out more about Ripley's daughter dying and things, but you could sense that in the film anyway. It wasn't really like anything. You can watch both versions of this film and really enjoy it, so it's not a tiebreaker at all. It's just a nice to see a different version of it. You can choose which one you want to watch at any time. The Abyss was something different. The Abyss was Cameron's 1989 film. It was delayed, then released in August, and it died a quick death. And it was one of those films that just you notice when you're watching it as it feels like it's been cut down, and it's not the full film. I think that's the thing that hurt the film is it was cut down, and you knew you were missing something. Something wasn't there that should have been there. There were other problems with the film that I'll get into, but that was the main thing. Was it was a film that didn't feel complete. There's lots of films I've talked about in this channel that don't feel complete. They've never had director's cuts. I mean, I mentioned Geronimo. They cut 20 minutes of that, and it's never been restored, and it really should be, because there's obviously a really good film there, and it could be just a bit better if you get all that footage back in it. This one, actually, because it was a successful enough film, and James Cameron was big at the time, he's still big, but he's in a different way. They finally managed to make 20th Century Fox, after the big success of Terminator 2, to actually go back and actually make a director's cut, and actually put it all back together, and do a documentary about the making of the film as well, because the making of the film was horrible. I mean, a lot of the actors did not work with James Cameron again, and James Cameron even admitted that this film was, even for one of his films that were always tough, this one was beyond the pale tough. Like, this one was really hard to make, and just actors did not enjoy the process. And a lot of technicians didn't enjoy the process. It was much harder than expected. I think they tried something and they realised when they were making a film it's much harder than we thought, and everyone was tired and cranky, and it was just very difficult. And as you watch the film, you can see why, because they're doing chases in submersibles in a tank and trying to make it look good in very limited space. And filming underwater is always difficult and technical with all the lights underwater, and trying to get all the lights worked out. And people have to spend hours getting the lighting worked out before you bring the actors in, and get the actors in to do a little clip of a scene, then get rid of them again. And it was a difficult process for everybody. It was like, I've heard it was genuinely hellish. I mean, one of the things with James Cameron this time, before he did Avatar, is he was a very physical effects focused director. He was very good at actually doing like special effects, models, all the rest of it. He was very good at all that stuff because he come up through that. But if it could be done real, he tended to do it real. I mean, there's a lot of shots in Terminator 2 that are amazing because they're done real. Or they're done with wires. They take the wires out using CGI, but they're very dangerous things to do. So, and he prepares them all, and he's very careful. And this film was much tougher. I mean, there was lots of shots, but people just went underwater and not knowing where the safety divers were and things like that. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on there that it was reported on. It was like, it was just one of those productions. And then the film came out and it didn't quite work the way people thought, because the first two thirds were genuinely good. Then the final third went a bit weird. And I should say straight away, I'm a big fan of James Cameron from Terminator to Terminator 2. Those four films I think are excellent. But I'm especially a big fan of the 80s stuff. After that, he made True Lies, which I enjoy, but it's a problem film. It's a flawed film. Like, the balance is a bit off in it, but it's still interesting. It's very interesting, but it's weird. It's a weird one. And Titanic, I like Titanic stories. I'm interested in the ship, but this is not the best version of Titanic. I like to remember the best version, and some of the romance is pretty sappy. I like Avatar more than most, actually, but it's not really about the plot. I'm probably doing a video on Avatar pretty soon, actually, because I think it's an interesting subject area. But it's something different. It's not the strengths of James Cameron had in the early part of his career, where he was very good at narrative, he was very good with characters, the characters are very human, you're really behind them, and I think that's been lost. I mean, look at the films he's produced recently. He produced Alita Battle Avatar, Alita something, I don't know. I like the film, Angel Battle Alita or something like that. I like the film, but it's very bitty, and it was based on James Cameron's script, and it was cut down. And you can tell what he'd have made of it. I mean, Robert Rodriguez directed it, and it was like, there was bits of the old Cameron style in there, but it's very bitty. But it's still very enjoyable, but you have to be aware that it's flawed. And then there was Dark Fate, which is a film that lost all sense of character, all sense of momentum. It was like, what if someone made a James Cameron film and did it horrendously awful? So, I mean, there was that. But this was still him in his peak. And The Abyss is kind of like the very flawed Pete Cameron film. Because 2/3 of it's great and 1/3 of it's not so good. And even in the director's cut, there is a massive problem in the film, which is the aliens. The aliens are the problem in the film. Now, the plot basically is a nuclear submarine, and during the Glasnost era, where Russia and America are still at each other's throat, but they're trying to make amends. But still tension. This is just like as Glasnost was coming in, but it was still like tensions. Really, you can always quite sure it was going to work. There are tensions. American nuclear sub sinks under mysterious circumstances. There's an underwater oil rig nearby, which the army takes over, and they move the rig right next to the nuclear submarine to look. The official story is to look for survivors, but they really what they do is make sure all the launch codes are taken out the sub so that the Russians don't get them. That's the basic thing. So they send down a SEAL team to do it, because they're experts at this stuff. And the designer of the rig also comes down. She's Lindsay, played by Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and she's the person who designed it, and also she's the ex-wife of Bud, who's the chief of the rig. He's the guy who runs it day to day. And obviously there's tension between them. They go and do the mission, find there's no survivors, which is not a surprise. They get the secrets out. And basically they're just trying to make sure that there's no way the Russians can actually deal with this. They try and find out what happened, no one can figure it out. Then suddenly beings with light show up. And it causes paranoia between all the different parties. Like the SEALs think it could be Russians. The civilians, not sure what it is. One or two start to see weird light and start to think it could be aliens. And then the situation develops. Most people watching the videos have seen The Abyss, but I thought I'd give it a kind of rough idea of what it is. The problem with the film really is that that's a great setup, and what happens afterwards basically is natural disasters because of increased paranoia between different parties that causes mistakes and causes disasters that could have been avoided if people thought it through. But the aliens really kill the film whenever the momentum's starting to build, because the aliens look like the aliens from Close Encounters but underwater. They have a lot of lights, and you know they're good guys. And the drama is that are the good guys. And it's like, well, two things do not work together. If they, I remember I read the novelisation of it before the film came out, because it was released a month or two before. And I was really keen on this film, so I've read it. And I imagined the aliens to be something a bit darker. There's lights to them, but I thought they were going to be more ambiguous. And then I saw the film and they weren't ambiguous at all, and I was like, oh, they've missed great film, but they've misdesigned aliens. And everyone else who liked the film say the same thing. You know, it's one of those things that it's almost universal. Like, what happened to this design of aliens? It's just, it doesn't work. And it's a big thing that sinks the film. But there's so much good stuff in there. I mean, there's a terrific scene halfway through where they have to uncouple the rig from the surface because the oxygen comes from the surface down a tube. They have to uncouple that because there's a storm going on above, and it's unsafe for the people to stay up there. So they're going to uncouple it and then come back a few days later when the storm's passed. They've got lots of reserves of oxygen, so they'll be fine. But because the Navy SEALs take the thing they need to use to uncouple it, they have to wait till the last minute to do it, and it causes havoc, and the whole thing gets ripped off from the top and it all comes all the way down, and it starts dragging the rig across towards the abyssal trench that's the big danger. That's a great sequence because you've got all this setup of, oh great, what's going to happen, and then the thing rips off and it comes down, it doesn't crush them, and then they have to secure the rig and all hell breaks loose there. It's an escalation of great sequences. That's what the film does really well. Just escalation of sequence after sequence. The film is great, all this stuff. The film is so good at the blue-collar life, the interactions between like, the military and the civilians and how tense it is. And it's just a general drama of escalation because the top SEAL, played by Michael Biehn, who's a regular from James Cameron, he's got some pressure sickness, so he's starting to become paranoid. And he starts off subtle, like he's overreacting to certain civilians in the way that he probably wouldn't normally. And then slowly he starts to get really paranoid, and that's what escalates the situation where as soon as the aliens turn up, he thinks they have a massive threat, much worse than the Russians, because he's so paranoid. And then he kickstarts the whole thing of trying to take the submersibles and attach a nuclear weapon to it, and he was send it down to them and blow them up. So he's getting paranoid. He's gone crazy. They have to try and stop him. So there's sequences of them trying to confront him, and he's going to go crazy and shoot them. So they have to back away. And then him basically taking over the rig and going to send this submersible down with a nuclear weapon. And they have to, and he's locked the door, so they have to go outside the rig, go under it in freezing water without any breathing active apparatus, and actually get to the moon pool and go back up and then fight him. And then that doesn't work. They have to chase them via submersibles. A really great sequence where they're actually fighting between these two submersibles and go through all these little trenches things is really amazing. I mean, you can tell why this film took forever to make, because some of the stuff they're doing is stuff they were doing models now, but they're doing for real here. They'd use some models, but a lot of the time the actors in the submersibles moving and things. It was really astonishing to watch. They managed to kill him off, and then they realise their submersible has leaked and they're so far away from the rig, so Lindsay has to drown, and she is dragged back to the rig and has to get revived, which is a really tense sequence, and it shows how much he still loves her. I mean, it's a cliche, but it works really well because they're using like physicality and real emotional stress to show that he still loves her, really. It's that thing of show, not tell. And it's really emotional, you're really into it. And all that stuff works, and it's been working the whole film. It's a textbook example of how to do suspense and action, because everything's attached to human emotion and human motivation. And then there's the aliens, and they always screw it up. Because all this stuff's going on, and I try to fight to stop blowing up these aliens. The aliens are so obviously good that it takes away any suspense. And it takes away any suspense from their situation, because you can know the aliens are good, the aliens will save them. If the aliens were more ambiguous and you weren't quite sure, but they were still going to fight to stop this from happening because it's a bad idea, and then the aliens are revealed to be good at the end, that would be much more dramatic, much more interesting. But just tipping off to everybody, yeah, they're good, it just sucks the life out of it every so often. It's just, you have to suspend disbelief. And it doesn't matter when you're in the actual scenes between the humans, because all that stuff's good. It's just as soon as you get to the scenes with the aliens, it always kind of sinks the film. And it's a real shame. It's like, well, no one in the guts to say to James Cameron, look, this design does not work. It tips your hand way too much. Because as I said, I've read the novelization. I can imagine them as a bit more sinister and a bit more, you know, not always good or bad, just ambiguous, but potentially sinister. And then when I saw the film, it was like, it wasn't there. You know, and it took away a lot of, I'd imagine something different. And from what I got, people who hadn't read the novel, just watching this, it was the same thing. I was like, there's no suspense here because we know they're good. They're too ET for the good of the film. But it's still a wonderful film. Despite this massive flaw in it, it still works so well. Because it's so well crafted. And it reminds you of when James Cameron was at his peak, how good he could be. Because Aliens is a really good film. Terminator is a really good film. Terminator 2 is a really good film. It's a bit bloated, but it's still a really good film. And then he kind of fell away after that, and he was a kind of big action hope for a very long time, and then it was like, well, he's past his peak. You know, that's the thing. You just realize he's past his peak. That's it. You've got the good stuff. And, you know, as a special edition, I like the special edition more because you get a point in the end where the aliens hold the world to ransom and say you have to change or we're going to drown you, we're going to drop this water on you, where we can raise the water to be so high and hit your coastal cities if you don't stop misbehaving and aiming nuclear weapons at each other. And it works a lot better because it shows you the idea of the microcosm and the macro world events, and it's showing you the history of humanity as being war. And it's basically saying, it's a very sentimental thing, but it works a lot better because it's like, oh, there's a point that what's going on inside the rig is a metaphor for humanity and what they do to each other. I mean, a bit simplistic, but it works in an adventure story. So it makes more sense in the extended version of what's going on. Still not perfect, but it makes more sense. In the theatrical cut, they just saved them and the rise of rig to the top, and it's like, what was that about? Like, what the hell was going on? It was a genuine sense of, huh? Like, it was a really good film, then, huh? So it was a weird film, and it hasn't really been released beyond DVD for a very long time. For a while, it was on Netflix and HD. Apparently, they have remastered it a bit because James Cameron's working on Avatar sequels just now. It hasn't been approved yet, but I'm hoping that will happen soon because this is a film that should be shown. This is a film that really needs the support of everybody. It is one of Cameron's best films, even though it's a very flawed film. It is very much worth your time if you get a chance to see it, because it is really well made. You know, there's some good actors in it. Sometimes the dialogue's a bit cheesy, but that's an action movie thing. But the actual suspense sequences are all really original and really different and haven't really been done since. So I would definitely say go watch The Abyss. It's really good if you can find it. You know, but the DVD version is really bad condition just now. So it's a bit of a slog to watch. And it is a film that does work better on the bigger screen. I saw it in the cinema and it works better. And I saw the extended version of the big screen as well, and it works a lot better too. It's a big screen film. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be back soon with some more. Right, bye for now.